Very good morning to everyone. Very good morning, sir. Very warm welcome from Bharati Vidyapeeth College of Engineering and from the AICT Atal program. So I introduce today our today's speaker, who is Dr. Arvind Kumar, sir. So I'll just brief it out his bit achievements and his the academics, and then we'll proceed and I'll give over to sir then. So I'll talk about the Dr. Arvind sir is that he is working as an associate professor in Department of Mechanical Engineering at IIT Kanpur. Dr. Kumar received his BTech in manufacturing. Is my voice audible, sir?
Yes, I can hear.
Yeah, okay. So I'll repeat. So Dr. Arvind Kumar is working as an associate professor in Department of Mechanical Engineering at IIT Kanpur. Dr. Kumar received his BTech in Manufacturing Engineering in 2001 from NIFFT Ranchi. Then his master's degree in 2003 and PhD degree in 2008 from IIC Bangalore. After PhD, he worked with the European Solidification Group, that is ESG, as a postdoctoral fellow at École des Mines Nancy in France. Later, he was awarded the Marie Curie Fellowships at the University of Southampton in the UK, United Kingdom. His area of interest includes metal additive manufacturing, melting solidification, modeling and experimentation, and multi-scale computational heat transfer and fluid flow modeling. His group is also involved in the areas of thermal space surface coating technologies, and phase change based energy storage technologies. Dr. Kumar has published about 100 peer-reviewed journal papers and 100 conference papers. At IIT Kanpur, he is leading the Additive Manufacturing Group, that is AMG, and currently executing projects in the area of additive manufacturing, solidification, and energy storage. Dr. Kumar's academic honors include P.K. Kelkar Young Faculty Research Fellowship position at IIT Kanpur, IEI Young Engineers Award, Britain's Young Engineers in the UK, YIM Boston Award in 2011, which was held in USA, and also he has received the Marie Curie Fellowships in UK. So it's been honor to you, sir, to have you here, and I would now request sir to take over and start with the today's session. So thank you very much, sir, for accepting us. And we are very glad to have you. And we again welcome you from the college with our college, Bharati Vidyapeeth College of Engineering, and also from Atal FDP program on 3D printing and design. So, sir will take over with the topic for the 2 days, which is on basics and fundamentals of metal printing. So, over to you, sir. Now, thank you so much.
Thank you, Pramod, for introducing me. I am sharing the screen.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. Can you see my shared screen?
Yes, sir. It's
Okay.
visible.
So uh, first, thanks to Dr. Pramod Suryavanshi for inviting me as a resource person in this FDP. Uh, uh, I also welcome the participants. So I just directly come down to the topic of my talk. I am giving two sessions. The first session is on fundamentals of metal 3D printing, and the second session is on applications of metal 3D printing. So I start with the first session, fundamentals of metal 3D printing. As Dr. Pramod has introduced, at IIT Kanpur, we have a full-fledged metal 3D printing facility, and since last 2.5 years, we started that facility and working on different problems. For example, metal additive manufacturing of titanium alloys, Inconel, then aluminum alloys, and so on. Apart from development of multi-scale uh, modeling tools, uh, using the experimental and modeling research, we are trying to explore the science involved in metal 3D printing, then design aspect, parameter optimization, defect minimization, and exploring various applications. So in the first session, I am giving you some glimpse about fundamentals involved in metal 3D printing process. So before that, just a background, as Pramod has already introduced, I come from IIT Kanpur, and this slide show some of different facility in IIT Kanpur, and different departments and different labs, library and all. Then my laboratory here is solidification laboratory, and in this we undertake various solidification related research, including additive manufacturing, laser welding, thermal spray coating, and thermal energy storage. And this shows our group. It was not an up-to-date photo. It is sometimes 3 or 4 years ago. But currently, also we have about uh, about 25 various masters, MS by research, and PhD students in our group. In the area of additive manufacturing, I am leading the additive manufacturing group. So let us start the talk. So I'm sure all of you are aware about additive manufacturing, right? It is also called 3D printing. So basically, if you see in this slide, additive manufacturing is a manufacturing technology which makes objects layer by layer manner from 3D CAD data. And as you can see, the name suggests it is different from material remover in traditional subtractive manufacturing. The figure shows how a CAD model is converted to a final part using a 3D printing machine. Of course, before that, we need design aspects like CAD design, then STL file design, tool slicing and tool design. And then this data is fed to the 3D printing machine, and machine will print the object for you. Of course, some machine comes with pre-defined parameters for a given material, but depending on part to part, you need to explore those parameters so that the product printed is defect free. And for a new material, this process parameter optimization or process map needs altogether study from the beginning, right? For example, I can tell you a 3D printing machine where it is capable of printing say stainless steel powder or titanium powder or Inconel powder, right? The basic parameters are there, fixed, or you can play a bit, but it is not guaranteed that using those parameters you will get a printed part, which is completely acceptable as per industry need or completely defect free. So here comes how you choose your parameters in an appropriate manner, and that requires study of science involved during the printing process. And this study is mainly by computational model and also supplemented by experimental study. But experimental studies have limited scope because of the complication and measurement restriction during the process. So here a modeling research comes very handy. So regarding additive manufacturing on 3D printing, you might have heard that it can build what we can see or what we can design. It is true to some extent, but only to a limited extent and only theoretically, because the reality is a bit different. In practice, we have to overcome several design, geometrical, material challenges, and then process parameter challenges. Then only the end product, that is the end printed part, would be something which can be accepted. So as I mentioned, here in 3D printing, digital 3D design data is used to build up a component in layers by layer by depositing the material. And we follow a bottom-up approach. That means a layer by layer build up. And different kind of materials, metals, plastic, and composites are being used. So this slide shows the basic difference between additive and subtractive manufacturing, which is quite obvious, and I'm sure you know that. In subtractive manufacturing, we start with a bulk feedstock and apply different subtractive manufacturing technology to remove material in order to get your final 3D part. And in this process, lot of wastage of material occurs. On the other hand, in additive manufacturing, we start with powder material, and from following a bottom-up approach, we deposit the material in layer by layer manner using a 3D printing machine, and then we get our 3D part. And as a result, the wastage involved here is very little. So this is the main difference. Then in subtractive manufacturing, you might need several machines depending on the final part. However, in additive manufacturing, one single 3D printing machine can do this job for you. And this way we can project additive manufacturing as one of the green manufacturing technology, because it involves less wastage and less energy sources by using a single piece of machine. Then you know that this additive manufacturing or 3D printing technology is growing very rapidly. Since last 10-12 years, it has grown to a very large extent, and in the past, none of the manufacturing process has witnessed such a high growth rate. So there must be some benefits attached, and that is why it is growing so rapidly. And I'm just listing some of the main benefits of additive manufacturing. For example, the first is it involves much reduced material waste and energy consumption. Then second is tooling reduction by single machine requirement. Third is it involves very short time to market, and that will help you to reduce inventory. Then using additive manufacturing, you can exercise prototyping and testing right at the concept level. If you see that prototype is not passing the test, right, you just go back to the computer, change the CAD model, and then immediately build the next design. Next advantage is complex shapes not an issue in additive manufacturing, and you can see the figure below, very complex heat exchanger and then hydraulic component with complex interchannels and complex geometry, and even conformal cooling channels can be very easily manufactured by additive manufacturing. However, this can be really impossible by conventional subtractive manufacturing. Light weighing is another big advantage of additive manufacturing, where you can design the material suitably at suitable place and you can achieve light weighing. For example, the light weighing example is given here. A traditional bracket used in aircraft made by say forging process or forming process, it weighs 2 kg. A new design created by additive manufacturing weighs only 300 grams, and it does not compromise with performance. So you can see just one single part, you can reduce the weight from 2 kg to say 300 grams, right? And in an aircraft, several such parts could be potentially manufactured during additive manufacturing. And then you can see how much weight reduction is possible. This is one example in big aircraft, or say in automotive also, or say in single part use also you can reduce weight, right? You just have to check that you do not compromise with performance. So this additive manufacturing technology leads to freedom of design concept. It means now you are okay for design for manufacturing. Design something and then additive manufacturing will build that for you, right? Then this technology is very suitable for functionally graded materials, multi-materials, and hybrid manufacturing. The functionally graded materials and multi-materials are widely required in several industries, starting from biomedical implants, then high temperature applications, high corrosion applications, and hybrid manufacturing is very much required. Where some parts are built conventionally and remaining portion is built using additive manufacturing. So, sort of repair kind of application of expensive or complicated parts like say turbine blade, right? Here this additive manufacturing can contribute a lot. So at present, our context is that we can see significant increase in market for additive manufactured parts, and you can see the business for a 3D printing parts from year 2012 to projected 2025. It is increasing with a very high rate, and throughout the world, different countries are diverting their focus on additive manufacturing with a large chunk of funding, and that to develop world-class facilities. In India also it has started, but with very low attention. And in India, we need to develop additive manufacturing technologies for indigenous production of AM components and process development for various metals, so that our OEM and other related industries can be impacted. This is one reason that we in India, as a researchers, as a student, need to address this issue very well. So now, since the topic is on metal additive manufacturing, metal 3D printing, I come down directly to metal 3D printing. So in metal 3D printing, basically we have two technologies available. One is based on powder bed fusion, and the other is based on powder delivery. So in powder bed fusion, you have heard about processes like selective laser melting called SLM, and now it is referred to as powder bed fusion technology. If laser is used, LPBF. If electron beam is used, electron beam powder bed fusion, right? In powder delivery based technologies, we have laser metal deposition, also known as now directed energy deposition, where in powder bed fusion process, we first lay down a layer of powder on the build plate and selectively apply laser to melt and consolidate it to create the final part of that layer. In powder delivery based process, we actually feed the powder particles coaxially or through multiple nozzles simultaneously along with the laser. We do not lay down any powder layer there. So the feeded powder particles meet at the merging point of the laser at the substrate, and there they melt and form a melt pool, and then resolidified to create a deposit solidified layer. And this way, this is followed in layer-wise manner. The powder bed fusion processes are more popular because it can create complex parts with the help of surrounding powder offering as support. However, powder delivery based technology find it difficult to create complex parts, but for deposition kind of application or repair kind of application, this technology can be very well used. So if you look at powder bed fusion technology, so we have a powder layer, right? And we selectively melt the layer using some thermal energy source. This source could be laser and could be electron beam, right? And such machines are commercially available from different manufacturers like SLM Solution, EOS, Concept Laser, Realizer, Renishaw, 3D System, etc. The powder bed fusion processes are relatively slow, but it ensures good dimensional accuracy, flexible design, and complex part. Then, if electron beam is used as a thermal energy source, we have some machines from Arcam, like and beam and like that. Here the process is fast, but as I mentioned, the problem is to print complex geometries. So if we see the selective laser melting process, you can see the schematic of this process. We have a previously fused layer or build plate. Then we have a current powder layer, and laser beam is traversing along from left to right. So from left side we have solidified layer. Below the laser beam we have the melt pool, and then on the right side we have loose powder. So we can see it clearly that as the laser beam traverses, it creates a local melt pool, and as the laser traverses further, the local melt pool re-solidifies to create a consolidated layer. So we can see a different kind of physics, like say solidification here, then here interface of melt pool and powder, then melt pool where convection patterns and convection flow of the molten metal can happen, right? Laser is interacting with molten liquid. Here laser is also interacting with some powder, right? So it is a complicated scenario involving several physical phenomena. And this is for one current layer in one track. You see that if you want to make a 3D part, one layer needs several tracks, and then such several layers would require to complete the full height of the part. Build up is always from bottom to top, so build up direction will be vertically upward. Till now, any SLM process has not been developed where you can do incline build up and all. So I want to show you one animation where you can see how this SLM process works and creates complex parts. Okay, so you saw the video. It looks very straightforward and simple, that you feed some input to the machine and machine will give you the final printed part. But as I mentioned, for a new part, lot of understanding of the pre-process like design aspect is required, and that has to be sorted out. Then that design converted to STL file, then slicing and tool path generation, that is very important. Then the process understanding, that how melt pool forms and how that is related to microstructure and then mechanical properties, that understanding is required. If you play around with all these aspects very carefully, then only you are expected to get a part which will fulfill your performance requirement. Otherwise also you can get a part, but the part will not fulfill your performance requirement. It is like a bad part or defective part. So here the challenge lies that to create defect free parts, you have to understand lot of pre-processing, lot of understanding for the process, and even after post processing, like say you need to think about post processing techniques for improving surface finish, or some heat treatment technique, or some technique for porosity reduction, like hot isostatic pressing and all. So these are all. So that's why we always realize that only industry involvement or industry thinks that they can, with a machine they can create anything, is not sufficient. Lot of scientific research is required, and there the academicians at different universities are contributing to. And you can see in the area of additive manufacturing, the volume of papers coming up these days, right? Some 6 7 years ago the volume was low, but now you see every day several new and interesting papers are coming up. So you can realize that so much scope is available for research in this area. So in SLM process, here again you can see the one schematic. As I mentioned, the advantage here is that we melt the powder particles in the layer completely and then resolidify it. So full melting and resolidification allow you to make a solidified consolidated parts where the densities will be very close to the true density. So SLM parts are having much higher density and strength, and sometimes density is very close to 99.99% also. So you can see the parts produced are as good as cast product or welded product.
Sir, your PPT is not visible, sir.
Okay. Okay. I think now can you see?
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay. When I saw the video, I have to
I think
that share again. Okay. Yeah.
okay, okay. You can
So
continue.
I was telling you that since SLM involves full melting and resolidification, we get part density close to the true density of the material, and that's way we can get higher strength, and the parts produce something like cast product and welded product. So I like to show you another video for how laser interacts with powder. You see in the layer several micron size powder particles are there, and when laser is impacting and traversing along the designated tool path, local melting solidification happening and resolidification happens, parts melt pool consolidated to a solidified layer. And it happens so quickly. You can see the real time involved there in the video. All right. So is the slide visible? Hello? Hello? Hello?
Yes, it is visible, sir.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So it's visible. Hello?
Okay, good. So coming to the next slide, uh, uh, we can list down the advantages related to SLM process. This process can be applied to various materials if they are available as powders, and complete melting of powder produces parts with much high density and strength. And then we saw the process is happening quite rapidly. So rapid melting and solidification of these metals alloy results in unique properties that are distinct from and can be sometimes more desirable or better than the cast or wrought parts made from identical alloys. We'll see that with rapid melting solidification in such a small melt pool leads to very fine microstructure, and fine microstructure leads to very good strength. At present, different materials are being used in the SLM process, starting from stainless steel, which is used for functional prototypes, tool steel, it is used for injection molding and functional prototypes, commercially pure titanium, it is for implants and medical devices, Ti64 alloy, it is again for implants and high performance functional components, then titanium rubidium alloy, implantable devices, then aluminum alloy, these functional prototypes and series parts and automotive application. Cobalt chrome alloy, it is for functional prototypes and medical and dental application. These are for metals, but SLM can also be applied for composites, plastic and polymers, and sometimes metal matrix composites, or sometimes polymer metal composites. And nowadays also it is being tried for some metal nano composites. All right, some research is going on. In fact, for metal nano composites, we are also working in one problem by that directed energy deposition process. So now, if you see the process, as I mentioned, the process understanding is crucial here. So we must understand what are the parameters or what are the aspects involved in the process. So parameters involved could be listed or categorized under different category like material parameter, laser parameter, and process parameters. So if I start with material parameters, material parameters means that powder characteristics, it will involve its shape, size, its thermal properties, its optical properties, like laser absorption characteristics, and some particle should not be very much reflective and kind of that, right? Then in the powder size distribution is also important, because while spreading the powder layer by the recoater, and the powder should be flowable. So powder size distribution becomes very important. Typically in SLM process, we want a very narrow powder size distribution, so that most of the particles are more or less of uniform size and spherical in shape. So powder morphology comes here, the shape, as I mentioned, the spherical shapes are desired. So you see the shape, morphology, and size distribution affect the generation of powder layer. And since it is the first input to the process where laser interacts and creates the solid part from that powder layer, it is very important that powder characteristics are well chosen. The thermal conductivity of the powder material is important, right? You see, if the powder has very high thermal conductivity, heat will not remain focused, but it will diffuse, and in that sense, you would need higher laser energy to create the melt pool. For example, aluminum powder, they face problem. Copper powder, they face problem. Okay, then powder flowability, as I mentioned, for powder to flow smoothly during powder layer generation, it should have the following property: aspherical in shape, lowest surface roughness, narrow powder size distribution, incompressible, high density, hard and stiff, so that recorder can easily able to handle them. So in that sense, if we are talking about metal powder particles, a recorder, metal recorder should be okay. But if we are talking about polymer powder particles, a metal recorder may not work. We may need some plastic recorder. Then comes the second category, that is laser parameters. So you can understand various laser parameters here, like say pulse width, pulse rate, time gap between two pulses, wavelength of the laser, mode of operation of the laser, beam quality, spot size, laser power, and all, right? So you see that laser beam typically, most of the laser beam do not have uniform energy distribution. They have Gaussian and some other kind of energy distribution, top hat kind of that, right? So that distribution need to be understood. Then only we could develop something, a very good understanding about interaction of such laser beam with powder material. So all these affect the process. Uh, Laser power, I would say laser power, spot size and scan speed and powder bed temperature together determine the energy input and needed to fuse the powder into a consolidated part. The longer the laser dwells in a particular location, the deeper the fusion depth and larger the melt pool diameter. And in SLM process, typical layer thickness ranges from 100 to 150 micron. In fact, this is large. There are processes where the layer thickness is something about 20 to 30 micron. So you can imagine, if layer thickness is that much, your particle size should also match that layer thickness. It should be lower than the layer thickness. And when you can use finer particles and fine layer thickness, you can expect that the surface finish eventually will get would improve. Also, the microstructure refinement would be achieved, which will lead to enhanced mechanical properties. After laser parameters comes process parameters. So here the process parameters, you can very well guess what could be the main process parameters, like say scan speed, hatch spacing, layer thickness, scanning strategy. So scan speed directly influences the productivity and affect the density of the final process part. Hatch spacing is the distance between two successive scan tracks, and a certain amount of overlap is necessary between two consecutive hatch lines to avoid porosity and provide better layer integrity. Right? Layer thickness, with an increase in layer thickness, higher production speed is achieved, while with a decrease, higher precision is achieved. This is what I just mentioned. A scanning strategy, good scanning strategy makes the resultant product free from distortion, warpage, anisotropy, inaccuracy, porosity, and thermal stresses. We are going to see some of the aspects in the subsequent slide. So, since we are talking about layer-wise production, then repeated thermal cycling effect, so you can expect that there will be a lot of thermal stresses developing, and that should be kept at an acceptable limit to avoid distortion and warpage. So now coming down to challenges in the SLM process, surface finish is one of the prominent challenge because you cannot achieve surface finish more than the particle size. So typically particle size used is 15 to 40 micron. So your RA value of surface reference would lie in that range only. But there are many subtractive or micro machining processes where you can achieve very fine surface finish. So this is one challenge. We have to compromise with surface finish. And if you want to achieve better surface finish after printing, then we have to adopt some post finishing operation. But those post finishing operation can finish the surface exterior, but interior surfaces finish is again a challenge. Okay, then next challenge is density problem. We typically want the part density should be close to true material density, something like 99.99% and 99%. But because of many regions, like bad selection of process parameters, some defect like porosity, the density is falling behind that close to 99.9%. And this will lead to issues like lot of porosity formation in the layer, then integrity of the two layers, whether they are adjacent or whether they are consecutive layers. So that will create interlayer issues and all. Next problem is residual stress. I mentioned that since this process is layer wise deposition, so a lot of thermal stresses are involved because of repeated thermal cycling, heating and cooling cycle, and it provides a lot of residual stresses in the part. One more challenge in the SLM is balling defect. We are going to see what is that in the next slide. So balling defect is something you can see that the photograph on the right hand side. Instead of a continuous track, we obtain a spherical ball kind of track, right? And this is because of inappropriate choice of process parameter. So what happens? The balling is something like instability of a liquid on a solid where the liquid splits into a smaller entities in order to reduce the surface tension variation is called balling. So it is caused because when the total surface of the melt pool becomes larger than that of a sphere of the same volume, then balling occurs. For example, in the figure below, it is shown that if length L and diameter D ratio of the melt pool is greater than 2.1, then molten metal would break up into a small droplet to minimize the surface energy according to minimization of surface tension, and we will not get a continuous track. So here in this figure, you can see that if we use less laser power, right, we are expecting balling defect. As the laser power is increased, such phenomena is reduced. So same way, it can be related with other process parameter like scan speed, spot dia, layer thickness, and everything, right? All are interrelated. So the takeaway message is that we need to minimize this balling defect because we want a continuous track. I like to elaborate this residual stresses. You see, the residual stresses are defined as locked-in stresses that remain in the component which is in equilibrium with its surroundings. And the main source of origin of residual stress is differential heating or differential cooling of the component at different locations. It causes many further defects like cracking, warpage, delamination of layers. And it can be minimized by following proper scan strategy, such as short scan length, or by preheating the powder layer, or by some post printing methods like heat treatment or something like that. You can see because of residual stresses, some layers are spread apart and delamination is happening. In this figure, cracking is happening. So the mechanism of this residual stress, why differential heating and differential cooling leads to residual stress formation, that is being explained here. You see, at a local melt pool, when laser was falling on that, the melt pool will form. And at the edge of the melt pool, due to heating, expansion of material happens. And because of that, in the surrounding material experiences, because of a opposing effect, compressive stresses. So during heating, you can see we are experiencing expansion near the melt pool boundary, and below that a compressive stress. When the laser moves away and that melt pool start to resolidify, you can see very well that when shrinkage is happening, most of the metal shrinks, right? And because of that shrinkage, you can see a different stresses like compressive kind of stresses are developed near the melt pool. So you see, and this is experiencing a tensile stress. So you see very easily that a region in the vicinity of the melt pool tries to expand but restricted by surrounding material during the heating cycle. Thus, compressive stresses will generate in the vicinity of vicinity material. However, during cooling, solidified melt pool tries to shrink, but surrounding material does not allow it to shrink freely. And as a result, tensile stress is generated in the solidified melt pool region, which will remain as the residual stress when it cooled down to ambient temperature. So this is how this is one location, right? Now, when the next layer is formed, right, several things can happen again in a repeated manner, and that's why the stresses get locked and across different layers, and we need to ensure that the stresses do not cross the threshold. So here again it is mentioned during heating, the top layer tries to expand after gaining heat from the laser heat source. So component tries to bend away from the heat source like this, right? However, during cooling, after removal of the heat source, when heat source crosses that location, top layer shrinks as it is shown and contract. Component bends in the direction of the heat source and delaminates from the substrate. This is how it happens. You can see. So if stresses are excess, then this delamination will happen, right? So this is why it is very important to understand thermal cycle happening across different layers, and we need to ensure that this thermal cycle does not become too bad that will give rise to achieving the threshold value of stresses. So some remedies for residual stresses during process we can adopt, like we can design the scan strategy very in a proper manner. Different scan strategies are available, and each give different magnitude of stresses in the part. For example, this scan strategy you can see inclined 45 degree, this is 90 degree. Then another is shorter length of scan vectors like this, and even shorter length of scan vectors, right? So use of shorter length of scan vectors are preferable over longer length scan, so that the temperature gradient is reduced and restricted to a small zone only. So it will produce stresses variation locally. Then there are several other scan strategy like island kind of scan strategy, where serpentine manner of scans are adopted. And you see each island has different kind of serpentine, like 90 degree, 0 degree, then again 90 degree, kind of that. So you see now you are restricting the thermal gradient restricted along at a local location, and adjacent location has again a local thermal gradient, but again in a different direction. So each zone tried to nullify the thermal effect of each island, and because of that stresses will also nullify. So this way we could reduce the residual stresses in the part during processing. So some other technique is like preheating of the powder layer. It means that before starting the laser to scan a current layer, we preheat the powder layer, and preheating basically minimize temperature gradient. And if you minimize temperature gradient, your thermal stress will minimize, and as a result, you will not achieve the threshold value. But in SLM, preheating is not very popular because it will extend the production cycle, and preheating is not very well because you have to use another laser for that. You cannot use IR heating and all in SLM process. In electron beam based SLM process, powder bed fusion process, this preheating is very common. because electron beam, the advantage is that it can scan a layer very fast because it is based on magnetic coils, not on optics and galvanometer. So there the production time will not be compromised, and then in electron beam processes, this preheating of the powder layer is very common, and that is one of the big advantage offered by electron beam. Then we could reduce stresses by post-processing. We know that heat treatment relieves the residual stress developed during fabrication. As a post-treatment, annealing is widely used and has demonstrated in some cases a reduction of 70% of residual stresses. So such heat treatment process will involve heating a material above the recrystallization temperature, maintaining a suitable temperature for some time, and then cooling it with a certain cooling rate. Right? There is traditional heat treatment we typically adopt for a forming part process part, form part, or welded part, or cast part. So here also we could adopt that. So if we look at the key features of SLM manufactured parts, here I have shown you microstructure, 3D microstructure built along the build direction, and then this is transverse microstructure. You could see several melt pools are overlapped along the build direction, and along the track direction also they are overlapped. So you could see that typically a SLM fabricated part will consist of millions of such overlapped melt pools. Typically, as I mentioned, the layer thickness, say for example, is 30 micron. A melt pool size is, for example, something like 50 by 50 micron width and depth, right? Then say scan spacing is something like, again, 30 micron. So now based on this information, you can calculate number of melt pools in a part which has dimension 100 millimeter by 100 millimeter by 100 millimeter. You will get several millions. Okay. So and you see in each melt pool, such a small melt pool, because of rapid solidification, we have obtained very fine microstructure, and that contributes to that contributes to improvement of mechanical properties. But the problem is that along the build direction, we introduce some anisotropy. It means that along the build direction, because of layer-wise integration, the properties are weak. Okay. So the key features of SLM manufactured parts are a very fine microstructure due to rapid solidification, anisotropy in jet direction or build direction, which induces slightly lower mechanical properties due to superposition of layers. Anisotropy in other direction like X and Y direction can be minimized using a good laser traverse path. In SLM parts, typical density close to 99.9% can be easily reached, of course, with good choice of parameters. Sometimes, if density is not good, we adopt post-processing like hot isostatic pressing, HIP, where the porosity can be closed and density can be improved. The mechanical properties of SLM parts are usually superior to the property obtained with investment casting process, but inferior or sometimes close to conventional rod part. So this is important information. More on microstructure of metal AM parts. The microstructure of AM produced metal has unique properties. For example, it has fine columnar grain structure, and we have high amounts of grain orientation. Phase formation will take place, different intermetallic phases and all. It depends on process and material on which you are using. The scan strategy can be used to control the microstructure in theory. For example, we can control temperature gradient versus cooling rate or solidification rate, and we could obtain several kind of microstructure starting from planar growth to cellular growth to columnar growth to equiax growth. So this last aspect is a lot of focus currently, how to obtain cellular growth or equiax grain growth. If we produce equiax grains, then the advantage would be that the anisotropic what we are obtaining can be minimized. Now, I like to introduce you with a scanning strategy. I told you something in the previous slides, but you can see various scanning strategy are possible. For example, A is unidirectional, B is bidirectional, C is island scanning, D is spot melting, E is spot melting contours with snaking field, F is line melting contours with snaking field. So you see, these are important so that the microstructure anisotropy and residual stresses can be controlled, right? Then I also like to introduce you with support structure we use in some complicated part printing. So the support structure has several functions. For example, it supports the part in case of overhangs. It strengthens and fixes the part to the building platform. It conducts excess heat away and prevent warping or complete build failure. And different kind of support structure are shown in these figures, in these figures, in these figures, in these figures. So when you need overhang parts and complex contouring, you would always need support. Some more supports are shown here. Here for dental, some supports are shown. Design of support structure comes that you have to design the support structure along with your CAD model. And there again, design of support structure becomes an important issue because some experience is needed, and so that you achieve the full functionality of the support. Now, as I mentioned, we need to understand the science involved in the process. So basically, as I mentioned, multi-physics phenomena taking place, thermal, physical, metallurgical aspects, right? They are also multi-scale. We are talking about a small melt pool. We are talking about track scale. We are talking about, layer scale. So you see, multi-physics and multi-scale phenomena are involved. I like to introduce with such phenomena. You see here the schematic. Locally, we have melt pool. Right side is the remaining powder in the current layer. Left side is solidified part, and laser is scanning from left to right. So you see in the melt pool, you have several thermal and fluid phenomena, flow of molten metal, then heat transfer, convective heat transfer, conductive heat transfer. Some of the metal also getting vaporized, evaporation phase change. Then this molten pool is solidifying. So from liquid to solid phase change, right? Before that, powder material is becoming liquid. So powder to liquid phase transition. Then here at the melt pool boundary interface, you have interaction of powder particle to the melt pool, right? Then laser is first interacting with powder material, then melt pool material, like fully liquid material. So change in interaction behavior. Powder behaves optically different than a liquid metal. Then from bottom, heat is conducted to the previous layer or build plate, right? From here, some heat is also transferred to the powder layer. So heat transfer in the powder. So you see, lot of complicated phenomena, thermal, fluid, and metallurgical. And at different scale, for example, it is at macro scale shown here, right? At micro scale, it is even more complicated because we need to see the wetting behavior of powder particles with the melt pool, the interaction of laser with the powder particles, and then with the liquid, capillary forces, vaporization, laser absorption, laser transmission, laser reflection, right? Heat convection, heat conduction, in the melt pool, Marangoni convection, in the melt pool, shrinkage, melting solidification phase change, all different kind of phenomena at different scale. So here I summarize the physical phenomena involved are multi-mode phase change, starting from melting, solidification, evaporation, and remelting. Then laser powder material interaction. During this interaction, mass, heat, and species transport. And then in the melt pool, surface tension and density gradient driven flows. And then when you move to next layers, next track, you are having repeated thermal cycling phenomena. So you understand now the physical phenomena involved are quite intricate. Therefore, we need to understand that. Once we understand the physical phenomena, we could able to control the following things like interlayer metallurgical bonding, defects, and microstructure evolution. Interlayer bonding should be sufficient so that delamination does not happen. Defect like porosity or balling defects or unmolten particle defects should not happen. Then we need to understand segregation behavior during solidification. Then we need to understand the cyclic temperature variation so that thermal stresses are minimized, delamination or interlayer defect does not happen. Most importantly, what we need to understand from here, we need to understand that the transport phenomena involved, right? So that we can control the process. So in our research group, we are dealing with such integrated problems experimentally as well as modeling wise. I would provide you a small glimpse about some of the work. Our research activities encompasses melt pool dynamics during powder melting, rapid cooling and non-equivalent rapid solidification, vaporization, thermal cycling. Then at different scale, starting with system, meso, micro scale studies of powder melting and coupling of multi-scale multi-physics phenomena using experimental and modeling studies. Then we look at understanding metallurgical layer bonding, microstructure formation, residual thermal stress and defects, and their effect on mechanical property. Process structure performance maps for different materials. We are currently undertaking steel, aluminum, inconel, and titanium materials. And then we are also looking for applications in different industries like aerospace, automotive, and tooling industries. And in our group, several students are working on these problems. Some of the examples are shown, like examples of interlayer bonding, porosity, thermal cycling, process map generation, then track scale melt pool analysis, multi-layer analysis, then metallurgical analysis, and some applications. So to further some results on modeling, like say this process modeling. So we consider here a mathematical description of the process physics. The laser heat source was modeled, shrinkage was modeled, then various phase transition from powder to liquid to solid transition have been modeled. And the result shows here, like when the laser beam is scanning from right side to left side, how the thermal field is evolving and melt pool is evolving. The melt pool is shown by boundary, and locally you can see the heat is consolidated at the current location of laser. And then as the laser moves, the previous track gets solidified, and then interaction of the current melt pool with the forward powder particles. So such kind of information can be very useful because you can understand the role of thermal fluid phenomena, then its role on further microstructure formation or melt pool dynamics, or some defect formation like balling or porosity. All these can be understood using such modeling technique. More on this fluid flow in the melt pool, you can see it is complex. Here you can see a transverse view. Various kind of fluid flow is possible, like say region marked 1 to 5. 1 is stagnation flow, 2 is free surface boundary layer flow, 3 is cooled corner region in the melt pool, 4 is negligible velocity, and 5 is recirculating zone. So you can very well understand the melt pool flow is not very similar to a laser welding melt pool. It is even more complicated than laser welding melt pool. And velocity magnitude in the melt pool is quite significant. You can see the maximum velocity in this melt pool obtained was up to 3.5 meter per second. It is quite in such a small melt pool. This is an animation of melt pool and thermal field generation. Laser is moving from right to left, and this color contour, black contour, is showing melt pool boundary. So you can see, based on all these opportunities, there are ample amount of research work available. Before that, current challenges and bottlenecks, I like to summarize. These are limited materials. Then properties of metals created through these processes are far from proven or industry requirement. Repeatability of the part production and speed to manufacture large products. These are also one of the main concerns. Dimensional accuracy, and one of the major benefit of additive manufacturing, I mentioned that it can make complex internal features, but the surface roughness or surface finish or in those internal features, how to improve upon that, that is still a challenge. You know, these complex internal channels you create for some coolant to flow through that, right? But the flow in such fine micro channels is affected by surface finish of those channels. So how to improve surface finish of those internal channels is an important aspect. Of course, it can be used by some post finishing techniques, like say you can use some sort of abrasive fluid based surface finish or nano finish operations. So based on this, we can mention we have a scope of significant design related research, fundamental scientific research, application oriented research, then research on metallurgical aspects, research on mechanical properties aspects, research on modeling control, research on development of different new material, research on development of different new application, then research on process innovation. So all these kinds of possibilities are there to explore. And this I mentioned to my students also, that the arena is open to you. You just choose some good problem and work. You will find that there is no dearth of exploring the things. You can explore, I mean, things much beyond your imagination. So better start working in this area. So with this, I like to close this session. Thank you for your attention, and I can take questions now.
Any questions from the participants?
Hello, good morning, sir. Sir, in SLM, as it is melting by the laser, so there may be issues of recast layer. So how we can rectify that?
No, recast layer. I mean, it is not like recast layer. Recast layer is terminology sometimes referred to other manufacturing process like EDM kind of that. Here we say that we can have remelted and resolidified layer, because suppose you're operating in current layer, your then on next layer some part of the previous layer will also get melted and resolidified. So that is actually coming in your favor, because for next layer to properly bond with the previous layer, you need to melt some portion of the previous layer. We say remelting and resolidification, not recasting. Recasting not a proper word, I would say.
Okay, thanks, sir.